Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's ASAP Netcast. Our webinar today is titled Beyond the Health Check, Implementing an Alliance Operational Effectiveness Program. It's brought to you by the Association of Strategic Alliance Professionals, and we're very pleased to have this today's presentation sponsored by the Rhythm of Business. We have two presenters today from the Rhythm of Business, Jeff Schuman and Jan Twombly, and we'll get to introducing them in just a minute. In the meantime, we'd just like to go through a couple of housekeeping and news announcement items. Kim, if you could advance the slide, I would appreciate it. And I just want to remind you, too, throughout today's presentation, there is a widget on your screen that will allow you to enter questions to the presenters, and we'll have a Q&A at the end of the formal presentation. So please, throughout the presentation, feel free to ask any questions. I'd like to just remind you the Association of Strategic Alliance Professionals, the benefits that we bring to the community. We bring knowledge and resources that include our best practice bulletin, Strategic Alliance Magazine, the Handbook of Alliance Management. We also bring events and community. Events can be as simple as a webinar like today's event, or it could be as major and important in the world of business and alliances as the upcoming Biopharma Conference in November or the Global Alliance Summit in March, as well as chapter events around the world. We also provide a broad range of education and professional development for alliance managers, including our certification program. Both of our presenters today are certified strategic alliance professionals. We have an ASAP member directory, career center, and other resources. If you're not a member, we strongly encourage you to join ASAP today. Next slide, please. So just wanted to let you know that there, in advance of the Biopharma Conference, this November 20th, there will be a CAM certification. That's the basic level of certification. There will be a workshop at the Biopharma Conference, and I believe you'll be able to take the exam there as well, but I'm not sure about that. But anyways, please sign up if you're in the Boston area and or look for other opportunities in your area to take workshops and to take these important exams. Next slide, please. Just want to let you know about some upcoming chapter events. November 6th, the Colorado chapter has a program on Alliance Strategy Map, Making It Work. On November 20, just in advance of the Biopharma Conference, the DC Mid-Atlantic chapter will be talking about how to rebuild trust with respect to alliance partners after a rupture or issue. The Silicon Valley chapter, also on November 20th, their event will be talking about collaborating on customer decisions. In December, the Benelux chapter will be meeting in Amsterdam and talking about ecosystem multi-party alliance versus simple structures for alliance. And in Atlanta, the Southeast chapter will be celebrating partnerships on December 12th. So if you're not a member of a chapter, we encourage you to get plugged in and learn more. It's really a key part of membership within ASAP and value. As I noted, there's a forthcoming Biopharma Conference. If you are in the biopharma industry, this is a must-attend event, November 20th to 22nd in Boston. As well, we encourage you, we're taking early registration now for the ASAP Global Alliance Summit in Scottsdale, Arizona at Talking Stick Resort, March 9 to 13, 2014. It's definitely where you want to be if you're an alliance manager. And do we have any other housekeeping to go over? Yes, I think we have another one, which is just to say conference registration. You can get a big discount if you go ahead and register early. You have a discount code here. Note that down. Discount code 10WEB. And if you that code, if you enter that code, you can get 10% off today on your registration. So attendees of the webinar, you've got an inside track to getting a discount. And also just note that you will be able to, you'll get a follow-up email from this webinar, so you will be able to view the webinar archive and we'll be able to see the presentation as well within a few days after the webinar. Okay. Next slide. So, and I believe we are now done with our housekeeping, and I would just like to give you a brief introduction to our speakers. Those of you who are involved in ASAP and attend events or involved in ASAP committees, They probably don't need introduction. Jeff Schuman and Jan Twombly are both have been long-time folks involved within the ASAP community. Jan Twombly, who is president of the Rhythm of Business, has been engaged in global and cross-industry and cross-sector collaborations for many years. Her focus is on scientific and technically intensive industries. And at the Rhythm of Business, she has led the development of a comprehensive management methodology to structure, execute, manage, and measure the effectiveness of strategic alliances and collaborative networks. And as I mentioned, she holds the Certified Strategic Alliance Professional designation from ASAP and serves on the Executive Committee of the Association's Board of Directors and is chairperson of the Program Committee and also is involved in the Summit Biopharma Conference and is an advisor to Strategic Alliance Magazine. Jeff Schuman is a principal at the Rhythm of Business and is professor of management at Bentley University. Two of Schuman's courses, Managing Collaborative Relationships and Entrepreneurial Thinking, are part of the MBA curriculum at Bentley University. Jeff is also a big believer in practical experience. He's founded or been part of the founding of 5 companies in multiple industries throughout his career. And at the Rhythm of Business, his focus is on helping companies to advance their alliance and collaboration capability. He's worked extensively with global organizations as well as government agencies in numerous industries, including oil and gas, pharma, technology, consumer goods, and so on. I'd like to, if you want to back up one slide, I'd like to give you a little bit of introduction about the firm before we move into hand off the presentation to Jeff and Jan. Their focus is a combination of partnering with companies to help them and also doing research in the space of collaboration in business. The Rhythm of Business has developed methodologies and measurement tools that are applied in large, complex organizations in life sciences, medical device industry, high tech, international economic development, high-tech manufacturing, consumer goods, and logistics. The Rhythm of Business was Jeff and Jan were members of the first team that created the Alliance Management Professional Certification within ASAP, and obviously they combine both applied work with companies as well as consulting and research and academic work as well. So they bring all of that to their work with their clients. Next slide, please. And their focus, again, they believe that they are uniquely empowered to educate and help organizations succeed through alliances and collaborations. It's been the focus of their business for since 1999. They offer a variety of flexible and cost-effective engagement models, and they are capable of working at all levels of the organization, from the leadership level to the operational level, and their deliverables are always customized tools. So without further ado, I'd like to hand the presentation off to Jan Twombly, CSAP and President of the Rhythm of Business, and Jeff Schuman, CSAP and Principal at the Rhythm of Business. Thanks, folks. You're on.
Thank you very much, John, and welcome, everybody. We're pleased to be able to present this webinar to you today. It's very timely because this is the time of year when a lot of people are looking at their alliances and determining what they should be doing differently in the coming year. And one of the key challenges is always, how do we measure the performance of an alliance? Throughout all the years we've been involved in ASAP, metrics, performance management have always been really topics that people have wanted to dig into and seem to challenge folks. And part of the reason is that not everything that you want to measure in an alliance is financially related. When you're looking at financial outcomes, that's reasonably straightforward. But when we're looking at all of the aspects of alliances that need to be measured, some parts of it aren't quite so clear in how you go about measuring it. We know that it's art and science, and how do you measure some of the art part of it and some of the process that gets you to achieving the financial outcomes that you're looking for. So just a little bit of history. Because of this challenge, going back into about the late 1990s, the concept of the Alliance Health Check was developed. It's a diagnostic that really measures the fit between two partners, the degree in which they are aligned, it's really come to be considered an alliance best practice. And probably the one that has received the most attention was the one that Eli Lilly developed that's called the Voice of the Alliance. That focuses on cultural fit, strategic fit, and operational fit. And they do help you uncover issues in the way in which the alliance is working that aren't necessarily going to show up in your scorecards around milestones and other hard metrics that you track for the alliance. It's really more about how is the alliance working. And sometimes it can also provide the leading metrics that are critical for being able to address problems before they really explode, and be able to address things that maybe aren't making it onto the radar screen, but really are important to address to achieve desired outcomes in the alliance. And while its fit and alignment are critically important, particularly at the early stages of an alliance, we believe that it's also important to take a look at the effectiveness of the operations once the alliance is launched. And are you making progress towards the strategic intent? One of the things we really want to do is to make sure that alliances are tied to strategy. They're strategic because they drive the company's strategy. And more and more we're seeing that partnering strategy is really becoming a critical part of the corporate strategy. So several years back, in conjunction with some of our clients, we developed Vital Signs. And it's an evolution of the health check. And it really takes us from looking strictly at fit and alignment to also looking at the effectiveness of alliance operations and are you achieving the outcomes that you intended to. So why is effectiveness important? Well, we look at it really as being one of the three main categories of value that an alliance professional can help realize in the alliance. And in addition to alliance effectiveness, there's also financial value and there's risk mitigation as well, preventing the company from incurring unnecessary damage to their reputation, to their strategy, to their finances. But we think that it's really important to look at this effectiveness because effectiveness is all about minimizing the cost of time. It's all about making sure that you get to market sooner rather than later, that the new product gets built sooner rather than later. If you're in the biopharma industry, we like to say, what's the time to your first prescription? Can you help get it there sooner rather than later? When we used to do some work in the oil and gas industry, it was all about time to first oil. How long does it take before you can start generating money? And the way in which the alliance manager really can influence this is to ensure that communication flow, decisions get made, problems are resolved. You get the resources you need in order to be able to execute on the alliance strategy. You don't operate in silos. People are connected, and the communication between them is really ensuring that everybody is aligned and moving forward with all due speed. So we see looking at alliance effectiveness as really being critically important for the alliance manager to be able to deliver value to the organization. One of the things that Vital Signs does, because it is looking at effectiveness, and it does require that you have direct engagement with your partner. You have to do this with your partner. You can't just send out a survey and ask them to answer. Both parties, or however many are in the alliance, have to be very much involved in it. But it sets you on a path for actually engaging in continuous improvement for your alliance process. So you're really digging into how the alliance works. You're getting your executives engaged in being part and parcel of improving the operation of the alliance. We like to say that it results in conversations that otherwise wouldn't take place, because let's be honest, in your governance committee meetings, in team meetings, people talk mainly about the actual work of the alliance and less about the collaboration that's occurring and the way in which the alliance is functioning. Vital Signs provides a forum for you to talk about and address the way the alliance is actually working, which we believe will lead to getting better financial outcomes and be able to ward off any sort of risks and ensure that the alliance is moving smoothly along towards realizing its strategic intent. Now, the other thing about Vital Signs is it's customized for every alliance because as a wise alliance executive who now is ASAP's CEO is known to have said, if you've seen one alliance, you've seen one alliance. So when we conduct a Vital Signs assessment, it's critical that it be customized for the purpose of the alliance. What's it trying to achieve? You want to make sure that you're aligning your assessment and the focus of your inquiry around the specific purpose of the alliance. You want to make sure that you appreciate where it is in its life cycle. And you might approach a very long-lived alliance a little bit differently than you would one that is relatively new. You also want to pay attention to what's going on in the alliance right now. You're taking a snapshot of what's happening, what's the pulse of this alliance at the present time. So you've got to be cognizant about really where it is in its focus of activity and in its operational plan. And then you need to make sure you get the language right. Depending upon who your partner is or what industry you're in, you might refer to a project team or a working team, or you might have a steering committee. Your governance meetings might be called QBRs. So you really want to make sure that the language is customized for the particular alliance. And when you pay attention to all of that, it makes it easier for people to engage and to offer, true insights. So the process is really pretty simple. It's 3 parts. We start with interviews. And generally we conduct interviews with the majority of members of your governance committees or key executives who are working on the alliance. Based upon that and other information gathering that we do, we build out a survey. We build out an assessment that is going to give us really the read on the vital signs of the alliance. Once we have all of the survey data back, it's analyzed, reports, etc., and we conduct a workshop, a joint workshop between you and your partner for the purpose of developing a joint plan for improving alliance effectiveness. It's one of those conversations that otherwise wouldn't take place, and it can be very enlightening and really set you on a path for moving forward in your efforts. The other thing about vital signs is that there's no finger pointing, because it takes an entity view of the alliance. We look at the alliance as if it were a company unto itself. And, yes, it has to exist within the culture, strategies, processes of its partners, but we look at it as if it is, one single entity, not partners evaluating each other. And I think that that's really important to ensure that you gain support within your own organization and your partner organization. It produces insights and metrics. There's lots of aha moments, but you also have a baseline of metrics that can be tracked and compared over time. Oftentimes what we'll do is develop a little scorecard for some of the key issues that you want to monitor that can be evaluated on a quarterly basis, usually by your top leadership in the organization, or if you find that there's something on a particular team, you might do something with that particular team, because it does allow you to pinpoint where in your alliance structure things are working effectively, and of course where they are not. Based upon the way in which we collect the data, we can address things at an individual governance committee level or at a team level. But we also highlight where there might be some developmental opportunities for individuals, maybe just within the organizational structure of the alliance. Is your governance appropriately suited for where the alliance is? We look at the way work is actually happening. We look at resource allocations. Are you getting the resources that you need for this particular alliance? And are there conflicting incentives that might be working at cross purposes and preventing that realization of value? So, one of the things that it does is really can get at the root cause of issues that have been acknowledged. Oftentimes it can be very beneficial to have data that will really make tangible what everybody knows. And this is a little example of an alliance that we looked at some years back where people knew things were stalled. They knew that they weren't making progress. They actually had budget that wasn't being spent. And when we did the vital signs, it clearly showed that decisions weren't getting made. And it turned out that part of the reason was because the governance committees weren't providing leadership. They weren't taking it seriously, even though this was an important alliance for both partners. They didn't talk to the other committees that they had. It was very, very much siloed activity. And they also had very different risk tolerances. So this comes back a little bit to the alignment. They weren't aligned around what they would consider to be a risky posture for either of the partners. So as a result of conducting the vital signs and doing the workshop, they revamped the governance and they developed guidelines for acceptable risk. And that, and quite frankly, really just the fact that the workshop was held and they started talking about these issues and realized them, it allowed them not too far down the road to expand their alliance. They added another initiative to it, and we all know that when you can add another initiative to an existing alliance, that's a great resource leverage because you're already invested in the relationship. And so this alliance ended a couple of years ago, appropriately, it was supposed to, and both of the partners talk about how doing the vital signs assessment turned the alliance around, and they consider it to be one of the best alliances that they ever had. Now, we can also get through some of the cultural differences that might mask really what's going on. In some organizations, the culture is that you don't talk about what isn't working, that you don't raise issues. And so, what everybody was saying was that this alliance was successful. But the alliance manager on one of the partners was pretty sure it really wasn't. He was looking at the numbers, and he knew they weren't getting what they wanted out of it. So when we did the interviews, we confirmed that was indeed true, that there were clearly some things that were wrong with this particular alliance, particularly around the escalation process and accountability for results. But when we did the survey, we found out that neither party was satisfied with the results that they were getting. If you look at the chart on the right, you can see that there were only 59% of one partner that thought that they were on track to achieving their goals, and 68% of the other. And normally when we take a look at this type of thing, we like to see at least 70% of people saying, yes, we're on track. That's traditionally the benchmark that's used. But as a result of this, it was put out on the table, and the steering committee couldn't deny it. So they took action. They revamped their governance. They got rid of a money-losing project. They had a new sense of transparency and openness in the relationship because they had dealt with the elephant in the room. and they implemented a new strategic plan. And, you know, I'm pleased to say that they were happy a year later with where they were, and they continue to run their alliance today. So now that we've given you a little bit of an overview and a few examples of how companies have used this, Jeff, would you dig down a little bit into the algorithm that underlies vital signs?
Sure, it'd be my pleasure. As you can see in the screen right now, the whole focus of the vital signs assessment really is to make sure that the outcomes the organizations seek are being achieved. And so we look, that's what we classify as the strategic intent. Why did the companies get together in the first place? What is it that they're trying to do together, and through which each will receive the value that they seek? And we see that the strategic intent really, excuse me, is necessary based upon two foundational elements. One, effective collaboration is the appropriate level of collaboration that's required so that the work of the collaboration can happen as planned. And secondly, given the effective collaboration, is the environment in which the collaboration is taking place really conducive to producing the kind of results? So let's take a little closer look at each of these items. And start by looking at the behavioral component, starting by looking at what does it take to really have effective collaboration. And you can see that we've broken it down into three elements. So let's take a look at a little bit further in each of those elements. Start with the baseline, looking at coordinating activities. And one of the things that we do, based on the interviews and documentation review and any other information we can compile as to how the alliance is going, when we put it all together, we're trying to really come up with questions that will allow us to answer some broad questions related to the basic framework. So the broad question we're trying to answer around coordinate activities is, are the activities of the alliance sufficiently coordinated to allow team members to plan and execute them efficiently and effectively? Critically important question in making sure that the work that's necessary is happening. In addition, we want to take a look, make sure that the information is being communicated that needs to be communicated, and asking a very straightforward question as the overarching approach. Again, we will address this particular question by looking at several other questions that you'll see shortly, but is the right information communicated or available to the right person at the right time to appropriately inform and ensure timeliness and agility in decision making? And we all know how challenging it can be to get the right information to the right person at the right time, but that's really critical to achieving an effective alliance in operations. And ultimately, the reason we collaborate is to leverage one another's resources. We each bring certain resources to the relationship with the intent of making available and letting the partner gain access to those resources that it is seeking from this. And so we look at whether or not the financial, the people, the knowledge, and relationship resources of both parties, or of all parties, depending on how many are involved in the relationship, are they being fully utilized to make sure that they achieve the strategic intent of the alliance and that each partner receives the sources of value that it's seeking. We're really looking for the behavior that's taking place in the organization. So that's one of the foundations, making sure that people are good at collaborating and engaging in coordinating, communicating, and leveraging the resources. But all this takes place within that environment. And the critical element of making sure that the structural elements are in place really to have that supportive environment is looking at the governance, the accountability, and the trust and transparency. And so what's wrong, when you look at governance, again, the kind of question we're talking about is, do the governance committees and processes provide an effective forum for the conduct of alliance team business? And this is a critically important element of it. We all know, governance is really the management system. And at the end of the day, the governance has to be fit for purpose. You really have to look at what is the intent of the relationship and what are the parties going to be doing together in pursuit of that intent, and what are they going to be doing individually in pursuit of that intent, and ultimately figuring out what they have to do so that they are setting up the governance structure that will allow that to happen. In addition, there's the question of accountability, and we all know that accountability is a huge component of being successful in operations. And what we really want to try to do in accountability is make sure that our partner and our own people in our organization really are doing what they've committed to doing in the time in which they've committed to doing it. Because with the right governance structure and with the right level of accountability and people taking responsibility for their individual actions or inactions, we hopefully are developing that environment of trust and transparency, which is absolutely critical. Do the Alliance team members demonstrate trustworthiness? Do they follow the norms of the Alliance? Do they operate according to the spirit and intent of the Alliance? And let's be honest, we all know that trust is something you have built up over time by demonstrating that trustworthiness. It takes time to build it. But within a second, it can be evaporated because of the actions or the words taken by one party or the other. So while it can be extremely important and we feel good about the level of trust, at the end of the day, it can be easily broken. And once that's broken, it's very hard to regain the trust. So with these two foundational elements in place, we look at really what the whole thing's intended to do, and that's to accomplish the strategic intent. What's the purpose of the Alliance? And the first thing we obviously care about are the outstanding outcomes. Because at the end of the day, the reason we entered into this is because we were trying to achieve outcomes that we thought would be only achieved if we were working with another company, this particular company, as opposed to trying to do it on our own. And so what we're looking at are the Alliance teams achieving the financial and the strategic value as intended by the partners. At the end of the day, this is the question where the rubber meets the road, and really is something, obviously, that senior management cares very much about, as do the Alliance managers working on the Alliance. Another thing that's really important is the relationship. Would Alliance team members from both partners welcome an opportunity to extend, to enhance their relationship? Even in situations, interestingly enough, where perhaps the science behind the work that they were doing didn't work out, but people came away from the work that they had been doing feeling so positively about that relationship that they built up, the understanding how to work successfully with one another, that they would obviously look for an opportunity to enhance that or extend or start a new relationship. Critically important element. And then there's something, given the reality of the ever-present internet and the ability to find out everything about anybody these days, our reputation out there matters immensely. Does the Alliance enhance each company's reputation amongst potential external partners as an organization that is good to collaborate with? And one of the things that we see many companies doing, and it's something that we think everyone should do, is really talk to your partners, find out from your partners, how do they feel about working with you? And so engaging in kind of a listening tour with your partners is absolutely critical. If you will, they're the customers of working with you. And it's, if you're thinking of getting into an alliance with a company, I'm sure one of the things that you do is reach out to people that you know in a company that's already working with that company that you're thinking about doing a deal with, and getting a sense of, so how is it working with these people? Are they really good? Were there any problems? And that is a huge factor in whether or not a deal is consummated. We've all heard people get up on the stage or write and say, we want to be the partner of choice, or we are the partner of choice. We want the reputation that's going to make people reach out to us before they reach out to other people and for the purpose of doing a deal. So let's take a look. One of the things that Jen mentioned about how this is structured is that it is multi-layered, that the specific topics and the individual survey items that we come up with are customized, as Jan pointed out, based on the interviews and other documentation that we're able to look at. So you see here, for example, starting at effective collaboration, and then we drill down one layer, is the three things that we've just previously talked about: coordinating activities, communicating information, leveraging resources. But let's look now on the right-hand side at the coordinating activities. And we see 3 topical areas, and then we see individual questions. And by the way, this is just sample. These are not all the questions that necessarily were asked in this particular situation. But the topics really came out of the interviews and the documents that we looked at. And the 3 that we thought were important at this point in time are planning, execution, and roles and responsibilities. And then you see, okay, given planning, what are the examples of the kinds of questions that we might ask people to respond to, whether they agree or disagree with the particular thing? As, for example, the information is shared far enough in advance of deadlines to allow for effective planning. And we have used a Likert scale on this for going from, strongly agree to strongly disagree. So you can see that there's a multi-layer approach. But that multi-layer approach really allows us in the analysis of the surveys to really drill down. We can look at it by working team, by governance committee. We can look at it by region. We can look at it by functional position in the organization. And again, maintaining confidentiality of the respondents, we're still able to provide tremendous insight to what's going on in the organizations. And this serves as the basis, really, for the workshop and for moving the relationship from good to great.
And, earlier we talked about relationships that maybe had some problems. Vital Signs is also very useful if you have an alliance that is performing well, but maybe can perform better. In this particular example, one of the partners thought that they could do more. Revenues were beating forecasts, but they thought that perhaps there was more that could be done. And, looking in the Vital Signs survey, we found that sales management wasn't communicating and planning in a coordinated fashion. And at our workshop, a challenge was laid down. And it was really to achieve a step level in sales. And the alliance managers really took that on. And they worked with their sales management and put together both some education for their sales teams to help them really understand how to collaborate with one another, and made sure that every part of the relationship was operating on all cylinders. And they did, in fact, really boost their sales and were quite pleased with the outcomes. So again, you can use this as a catalyst to achieve something that you're not yet achieving and take that alliance from good to great.
And so, as Jen started in the beginning talking about the kind of the history of these health checks, when we look at it, and from a comparative point of view, because we get asked this quite often by people, and we look at kind of 3 major characteristics of each of these assessment tools. One is the purpose, secondly the scope, and the third is desired results. And as we see some of the differences between the 2 different approaches, for example, on the purpose and the traditional health check, it measures the well-being of the relationship, the strategic, operational, and cultural fit. The Vital Signs, as we've stressed, measures the effectiveness of the collaboration. Once you're in the collaboration, what matters most is, are you accomplishing the strategic intent for which that alliance was created? That is what really matters. And so then you're looking at the environment and the satisfaction with the outcomes, as you've seen in some of the charts Jim was just showing. The perceptions about the scope of the, look at about each partner based on the traditional health check. We ask questions about one company, how you feel about the other company in certain areas, and vice versa. And the Vital Signs assessment really looks at perceptions of the alliance as an entity. In other words, as if we all work for one company called Alliance Inc., and we're not trying to cast aspersions or point fingers on the other party, because we're all on the same team. And the question is, are we as a team, as an organization, as an entity, producing the outcomes that are desired? And finally, leading to the outcomes, then we get the desired results. Partners are aligned and feel good about the relationship under a traditional health check. Our view is that the alliance is operating in a way that allows it to achieve its strategic intent by leveraging all the alliance assets, at the same time minimizing the risks associated with partnering in the first place.
So how do you go about implementing an alliance effectiveness program? Well, what we've been describing so far is something that we as outside independent third parties come in and do. But anybody can take the algorithm that we've presented that Jeff went through and described and use that in your own health check. You design questions that fit around that algorithm as opposed to what you might traditionally be using. You know, we see this as something that is best used with very highly strategic alliances because we do dig in and we do really get underneath the covers. You know, we'll work with you to get buy-in with both your partner and your own executives. It's always good to tie it to an annual planning process when you do it for the first time, or achievement of a key milestone. If your alliance is moving from one phase of its life cycle to another, that can be a good time to take a look at it. And you want to stagger the implementation, too. You don't want to be doing all of your strategic alliances at once. You want to spread them out over the course of the year. And the other thing, too, is you generally want to have the alliance in place for about a year before you would even think about doing something like this. And in terms of intervals for conducting a repeat follow-on alliance, generally about 18 months is needed to be able to make sure that you've implemented your effectiveness improvement plan. And we just want to let you know that starting in 2014, we are going to have some options available where you can take our question library and our analysis templates and be able to bring them in-house so that you as the alliance managers are the ones conducting the assessment. You don't get quite the probing ability that we have, or to be able to, because of the fact that we are an independent third party, and we're also able to benchmark across many companies and many alliances for you. But that's certainly an option, and we realize that a lot of people look to do these internally. When we do it, we're respectful of everybody's time. It's a three-part process of discovery, development and implementation, analysis and reporting. There's very little time that is required of your executives and alliance team members. 30 minutes for those who are interviewed. The survey takes 10 minutes, 15 maybe, and then some people will participate in the workshop. For the alliance managers, it's a combined time of anywhere from a day to 2 days of their time over the whole process. We really take ownership of it so that you can accomplish your objectives and be able to focus on moving the alliance to the next stage. So in closing, I'd just like to summarize, why should you do this? Well, first of all, it's one of the core values that good professional alliance management provides, improving alliance effectiveness and driving towards strategic intent. You get a very complete and very thorough picture of what's going on in a complex alliance. We highlight what's good as well as what isn't working, so you can replicate things in other alliances. Certainly, we almost always highlight ways in which communication and coordination can be improved, usually with very simple things, simple tools and practices that can be put into place. We see where you can streamline things, make it simpler. We're always about making things simpler. And you build your bond with your partners significantly because you really understand what matters to them, and they understand what matters to you. It can be a great reset, or as I said a moment ago, it can launch you on the next stage of really, sparking efforts to improve outcomes and help grow that trust and transparency. You are on a journey together, and when you take the time to really take a look and see what it's going to take to be successful together, you grow the trust and transparency. And if you engage an outside party, you've got the confidence that things will remain anonymous, that people won't be called out. There's no finger pointing whatsoever. And you wouldn't believe some of the comments that we get and some of what we learn in the interviews. It really does give people a chance to share what's on their mind. So we wrap up every single presentation we do with this little saying, if you can walk, you can dance, if you can talk, you can sing. And really what it means is just get started. Start learning, start on the journey of improving the effectiveness of your alliance with a Vital Signs. And so I'm sure we've got some questions here. So I am going to turn the slides back over to ASAP, and John will take questions that have come in.
Thank you so much, Jan and Jeff, for a really outstanding and informative presentation. You really did give us a pretty complete picture of what you're talking about when you're talking about health check, and particularly about the Vital Signs health check, your own methodology and approach. So thank you so much for sharing. We did have a number of questions. You know, one comment which I will share with the audience was just someone said, it was great to hear your voices and your passion for your alliances and for your clients. And I think that really did shine through. If anyone who knows you, they know that Jan, you and Jeff are really passionate folks. So let's get to a few questions. So one of the really interesting questions, I thought, you kind of covered the answer in part. The question was, assuming the right work is done up front, you know, identifying alliance purpose, et cetera, how early is too early, or how late is too late to start an alliance assessment? And I think you answered part of the question by saying, you know, at least a year into the alliance before you want to think about that. But how else would you answer the question? Is it ever too late?
Well, no, it's never too late. It's never too late because, you know, to be honest, we've done this with an alliance that was in place for more than 20 years. You can always look at how can we be better. So, no, it's never too late to start, never too late to implement best practices and to be able to get to the next level in, you know, whatever that means for you.
Yeah, and another kind of time when it seems appropriate, and we've done it, is when the alliance is in an inflection point, in a transition point. You know, if you're in, let's say, the life science space, and you know, finally you've gotten the drug through approval process and you're going to market, let's just make sure we're firing on all cylinders as we go into this important revenue-generating phase of the relationship. So that's another good time to take a look at it.
Well, it makes another important point, which is that, you know, by being objective and focusing on the entity, the alliance, it's not necessarily you're looking for problems. You're just looking for any barriers that are there that would prevent you or inhibit you from taking it to the next level. So, you know, if you're at an inflection point, things could be going great, everybody's excited, you still might want to make sure that there aren't any hidden issues that could end up biting you in the rump as you get down the road. So another interesting question was sort of around the notion of getting buy-in and handling objections. So one question was, you know, sort of if there are differing opinions or understandings about what the alliance really is, how well does this work if your collaborator is convinced the relationship is an alliance when the activities taking place are very similar to non-alliance, like, you know, CRO or licensing relationships, and you're convinced that this is not an alliance? Does it still work?
That's an interesting question. I think that more and more what we're seeing today is, even if it isn't an alliance, people are recognizing that in order to gain value from a relationship, you have to collaborate. So if both parties believe that there is greater value that can be had or greater effectiveness in the relationship, then you could scope it differently so that you are, you know, really, again, just the customization. What's the purpose of this particular relationship? So you would have to do a little bit of work up front to make sure that there was agreement as to what the purpose was, what you were trying to achieve, and where you were, but you could absolutely address the set of questions so that it focused on that particular relationship. You know, if you don't have a willing partner, you're not going to be able to do this. But generally, I don't think we've ever had an instance where we were not able to help the partner see what the value was going to be for them when their other partner did indeed want to engage in a vital signs assessment.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So sort of generally, talking about how do you overcome objections? When I mean, you talked about clearly you identify that you only use modest blocks of time, so you kind of address that we have no time for this kind of objection. But I'm sure that people will say, and alliance managers will be dealing with 10 different things at one time. It's just not the right time, et cetera. How do you deal with all these sort of objections that you might get from those who are asked to participate in the health check process?
Yeah, that's really a good question, because you do run into those situations. But when we look at it, I guess we look at it kind of simply in the sense that companies strategically have, when they look at the make, buy, ally question, increasingly partnering more generically, let's say, have taken a larger and larger percentage of current revenues and pipeline revenues. And, in some industries, in fact, based on a study we did in the biopharma space, we saw, better than 50% of both those two metrics were based on alliances. And so, you damn well better be good at it as an organization. And what this is focused on is understanding, what's working and not working. And one of the benefits of being able to do this with a couple of, several of your alliances spread out over a period of time is really gives you a sense that there's some systemic kinds of issues taking place in your own organization. We've had some situations where, our companies had problems with a number of alliances, and they were always quick to blame it on their partners. But after doing some assessments, they realized, hey, you know what, we're really the one that's causing certain of these problems, because we're having the same issue creep up in very different kinds of relationships.
And, actually, Jeff, you bring up a good point, because I think one of the objections that we hear most often is we don't want to air our dirty laundry. We know we've got issues, and we don't want our partner to know about the issues that we have. And there's a couple of ways we can address that. One is to do something first internally, to have that conversation internally and then go to the partner. Because while you might be addressing your internal issues, you can't engage in the collaborative problem solving that may be resulting because of your internal issues. But normally, because of the way in which we look at the alliance as an entity and not as one partner or the other, we're able to get around the fact that, oh gosh, they're going to learn everything about what's wrong inside of our organization and focus on that collaborative problem solving.
That sounds great. We have about 3.5 minutes left, and I have two more interesting questions that I was hoping you could get to, so I can restate them once you answer them, but I want to give them both to you so you can be thinking about them. One was, they said thank you so much for an informative presentation. Does the health check help to identify which alliance members are working contrary to the alliance's success? And so that was one question. And then the other question was how effective are alliances when they are entered into without effectively establishing the strategic intent? So both really good questions. So I'll let you guys handle them quickly, and you got about 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the second one.
All right, and then I'll take the first.
It is interesting, and quite honestly, we find it somewhat surprising that in many instances, organizations are entering into these important collaborative relationships without having explicitly identified the strategic reason why you want to do that particular alliance. And with absent that strategic linkage back to one, having that strategic linkage allows you to speak to the C-level in your organization, because they too care about the overall strategy of the company. And this allows you to make that linkage. But if you don't know explicitly what form of value your company is hoping to gain access to, the leverage from your partner, then you don't know what goodness is. And there are myriad questions and decisions that have to be made, obviously, in the course of time, in these very complex relationships. And if you don't know what goodness is, it's very hard to make the right decision. It's not a function of making what you think is the best decision on that particular question. You need to look at it given the overall context, which is related to what is it that both companies are seeking in doing this deal. So it's a critically important thing to have that link.
And just quickly on the first question, uncovering people who are working at cross purposes to the alliance. Well, if the alliance manager suspects that, then yes, we'll probe for it. We basically form a hypothesis based upon the interviews and all of the other data gathering around what's going on in the alliance, and we test for that in the questions that we're looking for, in addition to more general ones. But if that were the case, we would definitely look for it, and if it was totally unknown, it would show up really in the way in which we look across the various metrics and the various areas, particularly as it relates to trust, and the way in which we would correlate the quantitative with the qualitative. So I would suspect that if that were the case, we would be able to get at it.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for all your thoughtful comments today. Again, folks, we'd like to thank our outstanding presenters whose firm is also the sponsor of today's Netcast, Beyond the Health Check, implementing an Alliance operational effectiveness program using a process the Rhythm of Business calls Vital Signs. Thank you so much for your time today. You will receive an archive or access to the archive and a copy of this presentation within the next several business days. Thank you so much for joining today, and thank you so much for your involvement and support of ASAP. Have a great day.